We're recording. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm 2 minutes late because I was making my coffee. um, so it occurs to me that, well, I guess the first thing is first. Okay, so purpose of what is the purpose of these meetings? Why do we do this? Seems like a useful thing to ask. So why do we do this? And I can tell you, my intention for these meetings is to facilitate an entrainment. So it's my experience that there is we could use any number of names. It doesn't matter what name we use because it's not the thing. The thing is not the name, and doesn't matter. But we could call it awareness. We could call it peace. We could call it spaciousness. We could call it consciousness. We could call it pure potential. And we overlook this, at least my experience has been most of my life, I overlooked this. Seems like most people overlook this. And yet, it's the only thing that, as far as I can tell, it's the only thing that gives satisfaction. It's the only thing that offers us what we're really looking for. Everything else, and we can look at this in a little bit more detail momentarily, but you can see that everything else doesn't satisfy. So we spend most of our lives wrestling with things and grasping for things and trying to figure things out. And all those things are temporary. None of them will give us really what we're looking for. Maybe you notice you get one thing, and then you think, this is the thing. If I get this thing, then I'll be happy. And then you get that thing, and then you're let down because it didn't give you what you really wanted. So my intention with these meetings is to facilitate an entrainment to that which does satisfy us. And so there are many ways in which we can participate in these meetings. You know, you could participate trying to understand something. You could participate trying to get something. You could participate as so they're entertainment. But the most useful way that I'm aware of to participate is to use this opportunity to look in your own direct experience. And so that's how the entrainment works, is that I use this opportunity to look at my direct experience I say my direct experience really isn't something that could be possessed, but I look at direct experience. And then you can look at direct experience, and in so doing, perhaps we are meeting in a way. So let's start by just seeing if that's possible. A friend of mine recently shared with me something that had been translated. I think it was a translation, translated by a man named Keith Dowman, who I'd never heard of before. And so I looked at his website and found he's done all kinds of translations. He seems like a very, very interesting person. He had done a translation of and now I don't remember what it was called, but it was a Buddhist text in which the teacher was giving an instruction for something called Maha Mudra. So I'm not going to profess to be a Sanskrit scholar, but I believe that mudra generally refers to a gesture. So you might be familiar with mudras that are hand gestures. There are also mudras that are whole body gestures. Maha, again, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but I believe Maha means great. Like Maharishi, great seer. Maha Mudra, great gesture. So this, now I believe that in some yogic, I think in maybe some Hatha yoga practices, they may refer to a Maha Mudra. There's a, I could be mistaken about this, but there's a Mula, no, that's a Maha Bandha, never mind. Great lock. But Maha Mudra, I found this to be quite interesting, and it was describing this, first of all, like many of these texts, it's saying how wonderful this thing is, whatever it is that's about to be expounded upon. This is the most wonderful, most powerful teaching ever. This is usually how the texts work. It's like ancient marketing. You know, they're very good at skillful marketing, because you want to first describe how wonderful this is. And you know, it's like, your life is so miserable, but I have this thing, it's called Maha Mudra, and it is amazing. It's the most wonderful thing. It's the most powerful thing. It's the most advanced thing. So everybody else who's out there with their other mudras, they don't know about this, but this is for you because you are ready. You are, you know, so this is very skillful marketing. this is how they always do it. And but it's also true. That's the thing. It's very skillful marketing because it's true. Because you can't hear it until you are ready. So he's describing this Maha Mudra and how do you so Maha Mudra is the answer. It is the answer. I mean, I'm just saying what the text says. Okay, I'm not claiming that I know, but this is what the text says. And so you might think, well, okay, tell me, what do I do? I have to stand on my head? Do I have to, you know, wiggle my ears? What do I do? What's the great gesture? Well, so he's describing how do you find it kind of located? How do you discover it? How do you ease into it? You kind of have to kind of happen upon it in a kind of indirect sense. Because why? Well, because, and this is my commentary now. Okay, this isn't said directly in the text, but why would that be? Well, it's because it's it's our natural state. The great gesture, the Maha Mudra, is our natural state. So how do you do it? Well, you don't do it, you happen upon it. You happen upon it when you cease doing everything else. It's like, how do you fall asleep? Right? You try doing all kinds of things to fall asleep, but ultimately, how do you fall asleep? You have to stop being awake. Okay. So in Mahamudra, again, my commentary, but how do you do it? Well, you have to stop doing everything else. And so this entrainment that I'm talking about is like that. So we go looking for it. Where is it? Where is it? And we're looking everywhere for where is this? You talk about peace, you talk about happiness, you talk about okayness, you talk about joy, you talk about all these things. Where are they? Where are they? I'm looking for them. I'm looking for them. I need to know where they are so I can reach for them and grasp them and hold on to them. Because that's our normal, habitual way of doing things. So we do a little bit of that, and we attempt to make that subtler and subtler, because there's no way. I mean, I say there's no way. There is a way. There is certainly a way. I don't know what that way is. There may be those who know that way. I don't know that way to like, snap my fingers and you find yourself having perfected Mahamudra. So maybe less skillful means, but more skillful than less skillful is, okay, let's become subtler in our grasping. So we see that we can see the grasping. Because if the grasping is too frantic, if you're drowning and you're thrashing about in the water and there's a shark coming after you, and somebody's strapped some heavy weights to your ankles, maybe not the best time for somebody to say, hey, just be a little more subtle. So we need to maybe become a little bit more, unstrap the weights, somebody shoot the shark. Okay, now maybe we can breathe a little easier. Now maybe we can attune ourselves to something a little subtler. So you can notice right now, and I can see some of you, so I know this is true for you, that there's nobody attacking you. You're not drowning right now. But you can notice the mind is still thrashing about. That's what it does. Thrashes about. Now, most of the time, we're concerned with the mind. We notice the mind is thrashing about. We don't like that. So we try to get it to be more organized, and that's nice. I find a more organized mind to be nice, but the problem is that we never are successful enough in that to fully satisfy ourselves. So we can just allow the mind to be as organized and settled as possible, but let's not aim for trying to completely soothe or pacify the mind, because that's sort of a waste of time. I think he makes this point in the Maha Mudra description, by the way. Could be making that up, but I think he does make this point, which I think is an important point, is that we can, but we're wasting our time waiting for the mind to settle completely. Okay, so if we're aiming to pacify the mind completely, it's just, from my perspective, a waste of time. So don't be too concerned about the mind. As long as it's not, as long as you don't, as long as you are no longer convinced that you're drowning in this very moment, then that's enough. You see, as long as you know that this, in this instant right now, you're not actually being attacked, as long as you can recognize reality enough to see that, that's enough. Then the mind will be as active and disturbed as it will be, but it's fine. Because what you can notice is that you, this is an interesting thing that we often overlook, but it's really an interest, it's very interesting, is you, and you maybe have heard these words before, but really notice what they're pointing to. You are aware of the mind. Isn't that true? You're aware. So you, if you're aware of it, do you really need to be so concerned about it? So have you ever had the experience that you ever listen to the radio or watch TV and there's something that happens and you get all worked up about it and you shout at the radio or the television? I've done that. Or maybe you've been witness to somebody doing that, or maybe you could just imagine that because you recognize that that capacity is in you to get so worked up about something like that, and then to do something idiotic. Like I talk to my dog in English. She understands a couple of words. She understands kibbles, hungry. Those are the main things she understands. But all the other words that I'm saying, she gives me these looks like, what are you saying? I wish I understood, because I think maybe you're talking about kibbles. But we're crazy, you know, we talk to things that can't respond, can't understand. In the case of the radio, there's nothing there. And so in the same way, kind of forgot where I was going with that, but it's a nice segue back into my main point, which is that in the same way we do this with our own mind, right? So this mind is like that. It's like the radio, it's going. It's just going. We identify with it and take it so seriously that we argue with it, we fight with it, we yell at it and shout at it. How dare you? Or if it says something that we like, we shout with joy, yay, it's saying something I like. But if we see it as just a radio, then maybe don't have to give it so much importance. And you can see that you're aware of it, just as you're aware of the radio. So, you know, like I said, a lot of time we want to pacify it, and like we want to turn down the radio and we want to turn it down so much that it's off. And we want to do that with the mind sometimes. And it's a nice experience. A silent mind is a very, very nice experience. And you can cultivate that. And maybe that's useful in a sense, because once the mind is silent, then there's it's easier perhaps to just turn and recognize this awareness. Easier maybe is the wrong word though, actually. I would say it's not easier. And this is the, to me, this is the great secret, is that it's actually not easier. It's just that that's what we've been told we need to do. And so I would say, as I've already said, so I'll repeat myself by saying that we don't need to pacify the mind entirely. We just need to not be so freaked out that we think that our death is imminent and that we have to work really hard to defend ourselves right now. So we can fortunately all just see this, because we have enough intelligence to recognize in this moment right now, regardless of whatever I might be thinking or feeling, in fact, I'm not imminently in danger. The mind can invent all kinds of dangers and threats. That's what it does. But in truth, right now, presently, there is no imminent threat. So that's all that's required, just that much. And then let the mind do its thing. So the radio's been turned down just enough that it's not hurting your ears any longer. You know, before it was turned up so much, oh, it hurts my ears. But now you turn it down just enough that it's not hurting your ears, and you can recognize, okay, it's just a radio. It's just doing its thing. Those are just some sounds happening. And you can recognize that this awareness is very intimate. So the sounds are, well, we can explore this in more detail. So this isn't exactly accurate, okay? But what I'm about to say is not exactly accurate, but it kind of leads us to something. So the sounds are somewhat at a distance from us. They're not as intimate as this awareness. So like I said, that's not exactly true. It's not exactly true, but it points to something. So we can, what's more true? I guess this is the way to get at it. So you have to look to your own experience. That's what I'm pointing to. What's more true? What's more reliable? What's more always here? The sounds of the mind or the awareness? And hopefully you see that awareness is more true, more intimate, more reliable, always here. It doesn't come and go. The sounds of the mind come and go. So when we're focused on the sounds of the mind and we're trying to wrestle with that, what are we trying to do? We say, I want peace. I just want peace. And we say, the mind is disturbing my peace. The mind with all of its noises and all this disturbance and all this coming and going, I just want some even peace. So then we're wrestling with the mind, trying to get it to be what we think it should be. And what I'm pointing to is give up on that. It's a waste of time. It's a total waste of time. Once you recognize that you are not in imminent danger, then you have all that's required. You have enough safety. Radio's been turned down enough that now you can easily look and see that this awareness, I'm just using a word, so don't get hung up on the word, because it's not the word, obviously. But this most intimate experience of yourself, which is aware of the sounds of the mind, is reliable, here always. So when you can recognize this, then the question is, why look anywhere else? And the only reason to look somewhere else is because you still believe that there's something else that will satisfy you more than this. And we all fall for that sometimes, except for maybe those who are perfected masters. Maybe they don't fall for it. So I don't know, because I don't have I say I don't know, and I guess maybe in some sense that's a lie. But I'll run with it. I don't know because it's not presently my experience. Now, see, there I'm lying again. Okay, I was going to say I don't know because it's not presently my experience, but that's a lie. It is actually presently my experience. It's interesting to catch myself in a lie like that. It is interesting, yeah. So right now, presently, it is my experience that there is only this awareness, and this is completely satisfying. There is nothing that is needed. So then, as I said, sometimes it seems this is where it gets tricky. Okay, so well, let's just pause there for a moment before I get ahead of myself, because I can go much further with this. But before we go any further with this, I want to see if that's clearer for you. So the usual caveat applies, which is I'm recording this. This is going to go on YouTube. So if you speak, then that will be in the recording that will be on YouTube. So you will be giving me your consent to include that on the clip on YouTube. But if you have any questions or uncertainty about or doubts about what I've just been describing and pointing you to look at for yourself and discover for yourself, then it'd be, I think, a good time to address those before we move on from this. So I'll pause to drink coffee and to give you a moment. If you'd like to speak, if you have a question or doubt or need clarification about any of that, you can just unmute yourself and speak.
Joey, I don't seem to have a problem with the momentary realization of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I can see that pretty clearly, but then it's as if my mind is trying to drag this realization into the world of time.
Yeah.
And yes. Says, now let's make this last.
Yeah.
That's the difficulty.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. So as long as, so great. I mean, that is exactly where I'm going. So the main thing at this point is just to have this glimpse, to be able to recognize that this is directly accessible in this moment. And so it sounds like you are clear on that. So that's great. And then the question that you're asking, it naturally follows from that, and it's perfect. Exactly the right question. I say exactly the right. I mean, it's like exactly right from my perspective, because that to me logically is what comes next. Is that it's like, okay, I can see that, but then and you saw me. I caught myself in a lie because I was about to kind of say the same thing, and then I looked more carefully and I realized, well, that's not true. But to recognize that is the next step in the inquiry. So perfect question. So before we move on, is there anybody else who is not clear on anything there? If you prefer, if you're too shy to speak, you may also send a message, and you can even send it privately so that only I see it. If you prefer to do it anonymously, I mean, it would not be anonymous to me. I would see your name, but I could respond anonymously. So that is a possibility for you as well. Since nobody is presently speaking, I'll continue. So I love the question. Yes, that's exactly right. So we catch this glimpse, and then there's this odd phenomenon, which is, you said it very well, it seems to want to drag it into time. So
Joey, can I intervene?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you, I feel like I only, right now at this stage, I feel like I get into this idea of consciousness. I try to be more conscious and aware whenever I feel like I'm suffering, or I feel like, oh, I'm in my mind right now, I'm caught up in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe now I have to be aware, but when I don't perceive myself as a victim, or I don't perceive myself as suffering,
Mm-hmm.
I still seem to be caught up in the story of the mind, and I don't seem to be suffering. I don't seem to be have that anxiety build up, but I still feel like, yeah, I'm still in my head thinking about what this means. But I feel like I'm only aware whenever I perceive myself that I'm suffering.
Yeah,
Have
right.
anything to say about that?
Well, that I think you said it. So you said you only perceive yourself to be suffering.
Okay.
Okay? So the question is, it is, so you can look and see, okay, you can just tell the truth about it. So there's not a whole lot. I mean, maybe there is a lot that you can do about it. I'm not skillful enough as a guide at this point in my life to be able to give you more skillful instruction on how to resolve that. I think that naturally what does occur, and there's this classic thing that we call midlife crisis. Okay, so people get to a certain age, usually around my age, and then all of a sudden they have this midlife crisis that we call, because there's it's kind of an existential crisis. It's just like, who am I? That's the question. Like, who am I? I thought I was this thing that's going to succeed in life. I thought I was going to win. You see, that's the thing, is you typically, when people are younger, they still have this belief that they're going to win. And that belief that they're going to win, they're going to somehow succeed in life, is strong enough that it overrides the underlying suffering. And the suffering, I mean, I'm using the term suffering, but we could just say confusion about identity, right? It overrides it takes higher priority. There's a sense of, I'm going to win, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to get it right, I'm going to be happy by my own power, I'm going to get it right? I'm striving, I'm going to win, I'm going to get enough by my own power. And that overrides this underlying confusion about who am I. And then there gets naturally in a person's life, whether it's at what age, I don't know, because it depends on the individual. For some people, it's when they're 5 years old, and for some people, it's when they're 55, and for some people, it's when they're 85. But at some point, this sense that I'm going to do it on my own, I'm going to win, becomes untenable. It becomes too unbelievable. And so then there's this midlife crisis. So the crisis is it's a crisis of identity. It's a crisis of purpose. It's a crisis of direction. It's a crisis of, fundamentally though, it's just identity. Who am I? I thought I was this thing who was going to win, this thing who was going to succeed, this thing who needed to defend itself and project its greatness and get all kinds of approval and wealth and power. And then come to find out, no, that's not going to satisfy me. It's not going to satisfy me at all, because I see that it's a lie, because I see that I'm going to die. I see that no matter how much I acquire, I will lose. No matter how much I am loved, I will suffer from the anxiety and fear that that I'm unloved. There's no amount of anything that I can get that will actually satisfy me or fortify me enough that I'm going to be invulnerable and always okay. So then all of a sudden, I'm very much aware of my insecurity. Up to that moment, I only noticed that insecurity in it was just highlighted, right? It's like kind of what you're describing. There are moments in which it's highlighted and I realize, ooh, I'm very insecure. What am I going to do? So you're very fortunate, I would say, in that at a relatively young age, you've had enough of what we could call suffering, enough of those moments of insecurity that have brought you to inquire and to discover that you're not who you thought you were. And then it's just sort of a balancing act. And this is where I'm saying, I'm admitting to you fully that I'm just not skillful enough to be able to give you better advice about how to, if you're saying, so there's something in you that recognizes that that you have this underlying insecurity and what identity crisis going on all the time, but it's just not amplified enough to really get your attention. It only is amplified under certain conditions and in certain moments. And there's something in you that wants, what I'm hearing you say is there's something in you that recognizes the lie of those moments of complacency in which you're allowing yourself to be lulled by this belief of I'm going to do it, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to win. And you want the greater peace that's available, but there's a kind of confusion about how do I, if I'm not motivated enough to even be aware of what's going on, then how am I going to discover that? And I'm not skillful enough to be able to give you the means by which to do that. I'm only skillful enough to give, and barely skillful enough, I'll admit, but only skillful enough to be able to offer instruction and pointing in the moments in which there is, in which you do have awareness of the identity crisis. Now that I've said that, I'm realizing that's not entirely true. Okay, so I've said that, but I can give you some, let's say, at least speculative advice. And it's something that I say often, which is just be honest. So you can be honest and recognize, you can kind of call yourself out on the lie when you see yourself lying to yourself. It is a skill that can be cultivated. So it's not like that just you have to wait for it to happen. You have you can cultivate the skill of being really honest with yourself. So you can notice when you are telling yourself the lie that by my own power I'm going to succeed. By my own power I'm going to acquire enough good looks, approval, love, wealth, fame, power to be secure and happy and satisfied forever. Because that's the lie that we allow ourselves to believe. And you can just call yourself out on it. You can just, in maybe a gentle way, just say, wait a second, now that's not true. It's just not true. There's no way. You can just see there's nobody who does that. Nobody. It doesn't matter. The wealthiest people are not secure. The most loved people are not secure. The most approved of people are not secure. The most intelligent people are not secure. None of these things give you what you are really wanting. Because otherwise, you see, then every time, we talk about there's a carrot and a stick. You understand what I'm talking about when I say carrot and a stick? Yeah. So you're then motivated by carrots and sticks. Every time there's a carrot, you say, ooh, it's a carrot. Every time there's a stick, you say, oh, it's a stick. And so the carrots and sticks are the carrot is, oh, somebody might like me. Oh, somebody might approve of me. Ooh, there might be some money there for me. And the stick is, oh, they're not going to like me. Oh, they're not going to love me. Oh, I'm going to lose something. So we're motivated by these things because we believe the lie that those things are going to give us what we want. But we can be honest about that. We have enough intelligence to be able to recognize that it's not true, because we can just see that it's never true. Never, never, ever, ever, ever true. I mean, do you know anybody who has enough of whatever, anything, to fully satisfy them?
I personally don't.
I don't think it's a possibility. It just isn't. I mean, because you see, until you have everything, and you have the absolute certainty that it is yours forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, you will not be satisfied. So long as there's, if you have 99.9% of the love in the universe, you won't be satisfied. And if you have 100% of the love in the universe, you still won't be satisfied. You know why? Is because you'll still fear that you might lose some of it.
Something like what?
You'll still fear that you might lose some of it. You might lose something, right? So if you have 99.9% of the love, the wealth, the approval, the health, the whatever, you won't be satisfied. If you have 100%, you still won't be satisfied because you'll fear that you could lose it.
So the things don't actually satisfy.
Correct.
No matter what.
You can see that, right? I mean, because it's fine to have desires. I mean, so says me. It's fine to have desires. A lot of time people want to they try to get rid of their desires. This is from my perspective, it's a common spiritual trap. People try to get rid of their desires, and all they do is suppress their desires. This is stupid. It's no good. It's ineffective. It's painful. I can say these things because I'm speaking of myself. I've done this. I know it firsthand. That's why, I mean, I'm not, it might sound like I'm talking about other people. I'm talking about myself. I know it's horribly painful. So there's there's a certain level of recognition, and it's a fairly superficial, immature level of recognition. It's a stage that I went through for a long time. Still fall for this one sometimes, but not nearly as badly as I used to, thank goodness. My desire is bad. So there's a level of truth there's a level of recognition there, of recognition of these desires will never fully satisfy me. Even if I have what I think the object of my desire is, it won't really satisfy me. So that's truthful, but then the mistake is then saying, well, the desire is the problem. The desire is not the problem. The desire actually is arising from deeper recognition of what is already true. So I want to be loved. I want all of the love, and I want it forever and ever and ever and ever, without any fear or anxiety that it might be taken away. Well, I know that outwardly that isn't possible. Because for there to be anything, there has to be more than one, right? I mean, that's the nature of the manifest world, is that it's multiplicity. There's more than one in appearance.
I didn't get that part. More than one what?
Of anything, whatever. I mean, for there to be, there's a seer and the seen, right? I'm the seer, you're the seen, or the other way around. In order for there to be I'm just saying in the manifest world, the manifest reality, there's always more than one. There's seer and the seen. That's just the nature of it. Otherwise, we're not. There's nothing to talk about. So I know on some level, we all know that there's no way in this manifest reality to acquire enough of anything in order to satisfy ourselves. We know that's not going to be the way. We still act out of that ignorance frequently, thinking that mistakenly that we can acquire enough to give us security so that we'll be okay. But we know on a deeper level that that's not true. Do you agree or do you disagree?
So I haven't suffered enough by just right now. I'm just in the spirit of like, oh, I have these desires, a lot of desires, but I do know, I recognize that. In my experience, when I see that, what I say is like, I could get to like, let's say, I've acquired like 10% of worldly desires, and when I look at people having 50% who acquired, I feel like, oh, I haven't done enough.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
missing out. So it's like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's kind of the heart of what I'm saying, is that so long as that impulse is stronger than the identity crisis, so underneath this is this identity crisis, this recognition of I don't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this other impulse which is stronger than that for you, which is I need more. It's not fair. Those people have 50%. I only have 10%. I'll be happier if I can get 50%. That's just it's a stronger impulse right now.
Yeah, that's what I experience right now.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that you can accept that's just how it is, or you can also just start being really honest about it. Being honest about it doesn't mean you need to suppress the desire. It's just to be honest that you just recognize, oh yeah, there's that desire. Like I have these desires. I have desires. I have desires. You know, I rent my home. Not particularly happy about renting my home. I want to own my own home. You see, so I have this desire. And so I can, there are choices available. Okay, I can suppress that. I can try to just say, oh, that's, and this is what I'm saying is that does not work. Suppressing the desire does not work. That's an option. I can try to suppress the desire. That just leads to what I sometimes refer to as psycho-spiritual constipation. It's an unpleasant experience. So suppressing the desire isn't good. But then, or I could just try to indulge the desire. But I know that that's miserable too. And anytime I attempt to indulge the desire, I'm almost instantly reminded of how miserable it is. It's just grasping, grasping, grasping. It's all based on, it highlights the identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm suggesting is there's a third option, which is a more, which is to recognize the desire and to also instantly recognize. So this is the miracle of what we could call imagination. You don't even have to indulge the desire to be able to recognize what the outcome of it would be. So just through the imagination, you can instantly recognize that indulging the desire would be miserable. So too would suppressing the desire, and therefore through this instantaneous use of the imagination, which is what I'm just calling telling the truth, you can just see what this whole thing is. You can just see there's just desire. But you can also recognize, which is kind of the first part of what we were discussing, that you are aware. You're aware of the desire. And that's really all. We've gone off on this sort of, I'll call it a tangent. I don't know if it's really a tangent, but we've gone off on this somewhat of a tangent. But the essence, the basis of the whole thing was to start just to notice that you have this ability to momentarily recognize, and this is actually true regardless of whatever else. I mean, you're saying that sometimes you've got these desires, and sometimes you're suffering, and when you're suffering, then it's easier for you to stop and recognize that you're aware. But if I just give you the instruction right now, regardless of what's going on, regardless of whether you perceive yourself to be suffering or not, aren't you able to just stop right now, just for a split second?
Yeah, I could do that any moment. Yeah.
Right. And so that's really all that that's the only prerequisite. Once that's true, which it is true for you, then the question that you're asking, I think kind of in essence is the same as the other question. It's because it's about wanting to do something with this recognition. So you want to do something with awareness. You want to do something with space. You want to extend it into time. You want, right? You have this glimpse of it, and then you say, oh, that's nice. I want to do something with that. I want to extend that into all of my life, because I believe that if I could do that, then that would somehow be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel
So
like I'm not doing enough. I feel not that I'm not doing enough. I feel like the sense that if the awareness is everything always, it'd be better.
yeah, right. So great. So that's a great jumping off point. So now I think we can move on to the next step of this inquiry. Okay. So the next step of the inquiry is, once we are able to recognize that we can pause and recognize that we are aware, then we can start to just see what's happening. So we can see these tendencies of these habits of trying to do something with it, to extend it into time. And we can then tell the truth, which is, right now we can all look. So again, it only works if you see this for yourself. So it doesn't work if you just take my word for it. You have to look for yourself, but look for yourself now and see, is there any hope of extending this into time? And I really want you to look, just really look and see. So don't try to puzzle over that intellectually, but I mean, really look at the nature. What I mean by this is, look at the nature of awareness. So in order to do that, you have to just pause and notice that you are aware. Notice that the nature of this awareness is timeless. This awareness is still. Without a thought, is there any time? So hopefully that's clear that time is just a thought. So this awareness is clear without a thought. Hopefully that's also obvious and clear to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need a thought to be aware. When we are purely aware, there is no time. Time is only a thought. So there's no hope of extending awareness into time. It's like saying you want to pack the sky into your lunchbox. There's just no hope of it. It's not going to happen.
What I'm here, what I'm hearing is awareness is timeless, and that I'm trying to put it in. Trying to put it into this idea of time. My idea of what time, what awareness should be in terms of what it needs to
Yes,
happen.
keep it simpler than that. You see, that's you trying to intellectualize it, which is fine, but it won't really satisfy you. So just keep it simpler than that. You can just see. I believe you do see. So I don't think that we need to complicate it anymore. But the simple, simpler you keep it, the better. Okay, so it's just to recognize in this moment intimately, you can recognize that you are aware.
Mm-hmm.
And you can recognize that awareness doesn't depend upon anything. Certainly doesn't depend upon a thought, because there are moments of thought-free awareness. And it may not be, maybe you perceive that there are thoughts 99.9% of the time. Doesn't matter. That 0.1% of the time in which there's no thought and there is awareness demonstrates to you that awareness exists independent of thought. So you can recognize this in your own direct experience. And then you can also be very still for a moment and just observe, is there any time without a thought?
Are you asking me something?
Well, you're free to answer if you'd like. It's not
Um,
required. The question for everybody, it's not just for you, it's just a question.
I feel like there are instances, a lot of instances without thought. It's just awareness.
Mm-hmm. And is there time without thought?
I don't seem to get the.
But you want something all the time, right? That's the goal. So I want something all the time. I want happiness all the time. So there's an expression, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Do you know this expression? It just means that, so oftentimes we have something in our hand, okay? We have something, but we feel dissatisfied. We say, "Ooh, I wish I had two." And we overlook that there's something here presently because we think that we're going to get something more in the future. So we're speculating that we can have more. And what I'm pointing to is so that we think we catch a glimpse presently of awareness in which there is no problem. And then we say, this is wonderful, but I need this all the time. And what I'm saying is, well, let's find out if that's actually desirable. Let's see what's actually happening. Let's take a look. So if I want something all the time, what am I really saying?
I don't have something right now.
Well, yeah, and also that time, let's find what time is. If I want to fit something into time, I want to fill time with something, I've got to know what time is. How am I going to do this? And what I'm saying is, if we look at time, let's really try to find time. Let's get it. Let's get really clear on what it is. So let's look for it. Is there any time without a thought? I can give you the answer. There's no time without thought. It's not possible. Because time is only a thought. And this is a very significant thing to recognize, because we play this game of time. And so we say, if we look honestly, we see that we're living our lives in time, which is to say, in thought. We're living our lives in thought, in time. But our actual lives are not there. So of course we're dissatisfied. Our actual lives are here. So but you have to look and see that this is true. So you say, what you catch a glimpse presently. You just stop. Then suddenly you become aware of yourself. You become aware of yourself because you are here. Your life is here. Your life, you exist timelessly here now. It's your only actual experience of yourself. And you say, this is wonderful, but how do I get this all the time? And what I'm pointing to is, it's like saying, I want to fit the sky into my lunchbox. The lunchbox exists in the sky, not the other way around. You don't pack the sky into the lunchbox. You don't pack yourself into time. It's an inversion, and it leads to unhappiness because you exist timelessly. Time exists in timelessness. Time is a thought arising presently in timelessness. So you can take a look. You just look at this several ways. One is just to look and see, can you find time without a thought? Another way is to look and see, can you find the past? You can have a thought about the past. But can you find the past? You start to see how everything, it's this idea of the past is propped up by all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of ideas, all kinds of conditioning. Say, well, and the central thing that props that up is me. Well, I know that I exist in time, and I have memories of myself in a previous time, and therefore there is time. And I exist in that. You see, it's very circular. But it doesn't satisfy us because it's not real, because you can't have it now. There is no such thing. There is no past. There's just an idea. There's just a thought of time, a thought of the past. And then we look for evidence of that here now. But the evidence is all circular. It's just based on thoughts. There's a thought that says, so you could imagine, okay, like this, let's make this into a science fiction story, okay? So you could imagine that there's a technology that's been invented that can implant memories into people. And you say, oh, I'm so unhappy, I'm so unhappy. And they say, well, don't worry, come to Memory Tech. For $100,000, we can implant you with happy memories. You say, I'm just so unhappy. All my memories are unhappy. Come to Memory Tech. We'll solve your problem. Give us $100,000. We'll implant you with some happy memories. So you hand them over your $100,000, and they implant some happy memories, and all of a sudden oh, isn't that nice? Oh, yesterday was so good, and the day before that was so good too, and it's all so good. All of my memories are so wonderful. What a wonderful life I've lived. My mother was wonderful, and my father was wonderful, and all my siblings were wonderful, and cousins were wonderful, my neighbors were wonderful, my teachers were wonderful, the place I lived was wonderful. It's all just so wonderful. So how do you know that's not real? Or how do you know it is real? How do you know your memories are real? How do you know that your memories are actually real? And by the way, you know, ask, I promise you talk to your mother about your memories of your childhood, and she will remember them differently. The same people who were there, they'll say, remember that time and that thing happened and you said that, and I did not say that at all, and those people weren't even there, and it was a different day, and you weren't 5, you were 7, and it was at this, and they remember it completely differently. So who's right? You know, my dad once said, I was talking to him about this kind of thing years and years ago. I heard some radio program about this research. They'd done a study in which they would interview people who were at these events. So they'd say, you know, any event, it doesn't matter, you know, some concert or some, doesn't matter, some big event where there are hundreds, thousands of people there. And so they'll, in retrospect, they would interview people and they would ask them for details about it. And everybody gives different details. So who's correct? And I talked to my dad about this, and he said, oh yeah, I know that. And he says, yeah, because I would talk to my brother, and my brother remembers things completely differently. And I said, see, there you go. This memory is unreliable. He said, oh, no, 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 no. He said, my memory is correct. And this is what we do. We all do this. We all say, no, 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 my memory is correct. I am right. How could that be? Your memory isn't correct. Your memory is just your memory. And it's just happening now. It's not true. And we can do this for the future too. You can see how much of your energy, how much of your life is consumed by projecting into the future. Where is that future? Always trying to get security in the future, right? That's what the whole, this is the question that was asked about this is, okay, I catch a glimpse of peace now. I catch a glimpse of awareness, but then how do I extend this into the future? I need to have this all the time. So our energy is consumed by trying to extend it into some imaginary future, which never arrives. But if we look carefully, we can see that the one thing, so no matter what time you think it is, doesn't matter what time you think it is. Doesn't matter if you think you're early in your life or you're late in your life or you've done these things or those things. It doesn't matter what time of day. It doesn't matter anything. None of that matters. No matter what time it is, you can see that you are always equally aware. Always, 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 always. It's always equally now. In your actual direct experience, always equally aware, equally now. So this is the most reliable thing. It is 100% reliable, always. Our memories aren't reliable, but this is reliable. So then we're trying to take what is reliable and we're trying to squeeze it into what is not reliable, but doesn't even exist other than as a thought. And we take all of, so you can also look at it this way, okay? You have, okay, if we're going to imagine time, then we say, well, there's this, right now is a midpoint of time. Has to be, because we're saying there's a past and there's going to be a future. So right now we're dividing time. This is how we usually view the present. The present is squeezed between the past and the future. And so, and based on that definition, how much space is the present? How much space is the present left with? Like, how do we define the present? If it's squeezed between the past and the future, where is it? You see, it's not in time. And yet we know that it exists because it's real, because it's here, because that's where we exist. That's our existence. We can access it now. You know you're present, obvious. But you can't fit that presence into time. Any more than you can fit the sky into a lunchbox. It's my stupid metaphor of the day. Fitting the sky. And so this is, to me, this is very significant because we can see how much of our lives are consumed by trying to fit something into an idea. And how we've got it completely inverted. We have this direct, intimate access to awareness presently. It's spacious, it's fulfilling. And then we can see how we occupy ourselves with these thoughts of the past and the future. And how we actually, in this very bizarre way, we define ourselves by these thoughts. So we have a thought of our past, all the things that have happened, and then we say, well, the future is going to look a lot like that. Right? It has to, because we say, well, just simplest example, I'm growing older. Got this memory of in the past, I was younger, and then I got older and older and older and older and older and older until now. So I guess I'm pretty old now. And then in the future, I'll just keep growing older. And whatever we think that means. So now we've got this identity built around being someone who grows older. But you can take a look presently at your actual experience of yourself and see, does your actual experience of yourself presently have an age? Does that make any sense? So we're literally completely free. That's our primary self. That's completely obvious to everybody here, unless it's not and you didn't speak up. But if you just stop now and look, then you see it's totally obvious. Here I am. Without a thought, who am I? This. Isn't that obvious? But then we trade our actual self, and we can't really do this, but in our thinking, we trade ourselves for an identity based on thought. So then suddenly we're trying to pack the sky into a lunchbox. So, oh, I'm so dissatisfied with this lunchbox. This lunchbox is getting older. It doesn't work as well as it used to. It doesn't fit enough stuff. I'm afraid that people don't like it. It's not attractive enough. But it's just an idea. The present reality always is, here I am. And the thoughts are always changing. The thoughts are totally unreliable. That's why I said, you can play that game of trying to pacify the mind forever. You'll never, sometimes people talk about, it's like you're wiping a mirror. I don't know what exactly, they talk about meditation as like wiping the mirror. Okay. So it's great. You do that for a while, until just enough, though. Just enough. You don't like what. Sometimes people just get in the habit of doing it, and they think they just have to keep doing it. But you only need to do it enough until it's really clear. You don't need to keep doing it, because you can keep doing it forever. But what's the point? So it's the same. We can keep trying to pacify the mind, but at what point is it just good enough? We don't need to be so concerned about constantly monitoring our thoughts and our thinking and trying to figure it out and have the most elevated spiritual thoughts and the most spiritual intellectual understanding and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that won't ever satisfy us. So that's what I got to say. Anybody have any other questions or doubts or anything else? As long as it's not about sports.
So Joey,
Yes.
My question is, what about, you talked about desires or indulging desires?
Say that again.
You talked about repressing desires,
Yes.
indulging desires. So I'd like you, can you talk more about, like, because when you repress, like, because I always feel like I've repressed emotion.
Yeah.
Then I feel it as pain in my body. So can you talk more about that? How do you deal with that?
Sure. So we have talked about this before, and I think some of that is still applicable, which is that sometimes, well, there's a fine line. We can certainly take an attitude of thinking that we know that we can predict what the correct outcome should be, and then we can measure our success based upon that, right? So we can say, well, I know that I should not experience pain, and so if I experience pain, then I'm failing.
Well, yes.
And that I would suggest it's not useful. So I don't think that it's useful to say that whatever our experience is a useful measure of our success, or that we could know what the correct outcome or correct experience should be. With that said, the main thing is this. Okay, so whatever is happening now.
Okay.
You can see how you, and I'm saying you, because I'm speaking of my own experience, and I'm fairly certain that this is a universal thing. Okay, so you can look to see how the reality is that you are here now, right? Isn't that obvious that you're always here now?
Always, yes, very obvious, yeah.
And so that's absolutely true, unquestionably true. And yet there's still a denial of it. Do you see that? So that in the moment, there's this experience, and there's a denial of your complete presence, because it's saying there's a possibility of being somewhere else. There's a possibility of getting out of this.
Yes. I mean, everything I do is to get out of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's because I don't want, I mean, I don't know how to stop fighting it.
And it's, and so I can speak from my own experience, is that in some ways it's related to what somebody was asking. So there's this, so long as there's this other impulse that says that somehow by my own power I'm going to get out of this. Somehow by my own power I'm going to fix this. Somehow by my own power. I'm going to get control over this, and I'm going to win. We all have that. We all have that delusion. So long as that is overpowering the truth-telling of the truth-telling urgency of the identity crisis, then we continue to some degree to indulge that, and then and I'll just use the word suffer because it's just a shorthand word, but we suffer as a result, or to the degree that we indulge that, because what we're fundamentally doing is we're denying the reality of ourselves. So we're saying, I, as this thought, is this separate thing, bound by time, have a possibility of getting control over this and getting out of the pain, getting out of now. Mm-hmm. And this just, we have enough experience to know that that's not true. I mean, you know that you're not going to get out of this alive, right? Nobody gets out of this alive. So then the question is, how long do we want to wait? And this is for everybody, for myself included, so it's not just directed at you. Yeah. But how long do we want to wait before we fully receive ourselves? You know, in the Bhagavad-Gita, at one point, I don't know if you're familiar with this story, but there's these two armies lined up. They're about to do battle, and Arjuna is the leader of one of the sides, and his charioteer is Krishna. Now, Krishna is an avatar, so he's God in form, and but Arjuna doesn't know this, and so he's talking to, he's distraught. Arjuna is distraught because they're about to do battle, and he's looking across the line. He sees that he's got cousins over there, and he's probably going to either be killed by his cousins or have to kill his cousins. And so this is not nice for him. And so he turns to Krishna for counsel, and he's talking to Krishna, and Krishna's giving him advice. And then at some point it comes out that Krishna is an avatar. Krishna is the ultimate divine, and Arjuna expresses he wants to really know Krishna as he actually is, not just in this form, but as he actually is. And it's been a long time since I've read it, so I'm paraphrasing. But Krishna is like, yeah. I don't know if you're really up for this, because it's pretty intense. And I believe that Arjuna says, yeah, no, bring it on. I want to see it. And so Krishna reveals himself, and it's everything. It's all of it. And it is intense. You know, it includes the most terrifying, painful things. It is really very, very intense. It's not just all light and rainbows and roses and unicorns. And so similarly, it reflects to us something of our own experience. So we long for the divine. We long for wholeness. We long to fully rest in ourselves. And that's what's being offered. But then we shy away from it because we say, oh, I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be like that. I thought it was going to be just nice. But you can see that it is, I say you can see, I believe you can see that it is if you're very observant in the moments of, well, I would say test it out with the more you can observe this in the moments where the intensity is not as high,
Yeah.
then the easier it becomes to observe when the intensity is higher. You can observe what is really going on, and you can see how. So if the pain, if you, let's say you've got a, let's say pain from 0 to 10, 10 being a maximum pain. Okay? So if you've got pain at a level 2, okay, then probably at a level 2, the intensity is such that it gets your attention. You would prefer that it wasn't there, but you're able to be present to it. Yeah. Really, really, really present to it. So then be so fully present to it that you really come to discover its true nature. Because to say it's pain, and I do understand the challenge of this, because I'm human. I experience my fair share of things where I struggle. But I'm speaking from experience. That if you really are observant, you'll see that to call it pain is already a lie. Yeah. And so that's why when it's easier when the intensity is a little lower, and then you keep getting clearer and clearer so that you can be as fully present to the experience regardless of the intensity. And then you can be just present to it as it is, rather than believing the story about it. So if you're really fully present to the experience, just be fully present to your experience now. And you can notice whatever the story is about the experience, whatever the labels are, and whatever the reactivity is, you can see that that's all based upon some conditioning. But imagine for a moment that imagine that your body is, it's kind of an odd, sort of morbid thing, but we'll go with it. Imagine that your body is dead, okay, but you are aware. So your body is incapable of moving away from the experience. Your body is incapable of flinching. Your body is incapable of doing anything. And all that's possible is for you just to be fully aware, present, and observing the experience as it is. And you can, as you do this, you can see these conditioned impulses to avoid, to react, to protect. And they very quickly label, right? This is, oh, that's pain. Oh, that's bad. Oh, that's going to be something even worse. Oh, got to get away. Oh, have to move. Oh, have to do this. Have to. It's constantly doing that. But you, in this unique position of your body being dead and you just being fully aware, you're just aware of, witness to these tendencies, but you're not indulging them. You're just observing them, and you can see them for what they are. So then you can see that that's actually what's happening. So the habit is to believe that this all has something to do with you, that you are in pain, that you are in danger, that you are suffering. But you can, when you are very still and observant in this way, you can start to see that you are actually aware. Awareness is not harmed. Awareness is not in pain. Awareness is not subject to any of this. And you can see that what's reacting are these conditions. So if you're just observant, you can see that happening.
So when you say though that pain, or these sensations, let's not call them pain, right?
Either way, I mean, it doesn't matter. We don't need to play the word games either. We can call it pain and just,
you know, I think somewhere you talked about, you know, you disown parts of yourself, or you repress parts of yourself. So just by doing that, will that bring reintegration back?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay. Okay, there's nothing more to do than that.
Of course, yes, yeah. So that's right. Because so you can be like, you know, you're like Arjuna being witness to Krishna.
Okay.
You know, so you observe these tendencies in yourself to flinch and look away, because there's certain aspects of the divine that, due to your conditioning, that conditioning wants to look away. That conditioning flinches. That conditioning contracts. When you're identified with the conditioning, and the conditioning contracts, then you say, I'm contracting. When the conditioning looks away, you say, I'm looking away. When the conditioning says, I'm in pain, you say, I'm in pain.
Okay.
The conditioning says, this is unbearable. You say, this is unbearable for me. But if you're really observant, you can see that the conditioning is playing out, but it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, that's the key then. Right?
So then the conditioning is actually liberating. When you are a witness to it, it is. So here's another, to me, it's a significant point. What is the substance of the conditioning? Okay, so because we can also play a game where we say, I'm separate from that. The awareness is, I am awareness, and awareness is separate. But that's not really true either. So we can start to see, well, what is this? And if we're really clear, we can see that what this is it's only awareness. It's only myself. So when it's in these forms, then it appears to be bound. It appears to have these forms, and then it appears as though there's a problem, right? Because then you don't want to touch that because that's going to be painful. You don't want to look there because that's going to be unpleasant. But when you're witness to it, it releases the form. What's liberated is the formlessness that was always true, which is who you are. So then no longer are you afraid to look. No longer are you afraid to be present, because you have a recognition that this is yourself. And the more that you do that, the clearer it becomes that that's always true. And that's why the intensity becomes easier to be present to, because in a sense, you can ask yourself this: what really fundamentally is the difference? How do you know the difference between pain and ecstasy?
Well, I mean, of course, because of what I believe. What I believe that the ecstasy would feel like.
So if you had full trust and knowledge, so there are forms. You know, I opened this. All right, I'll continue with it. In the Hindu tradition, the divine takes on various forms, some of which to the average human would be terrifying, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is true. Okay, so if you know for certain that this is the divine, then you're no longer afraid of the form. It doesn't matter. So it can come to you. It's got fangs dripping with blood, and whatever. Who cares? Because it's ecstasy, because it's the divine. So so what you said is true. Yeah, I mean, it's based on your belief. It's based on your conditioning, which says that's bad.
I don't
That's
like it. Yeah.
That's going to hurt me.
Yeah.
And
not that's going to hurt me. That is hurting me.
that is hurting me. Yeah.
I'm going to. It's right in this.
Well, yeah, but see, then you got to get a little bit more truthful, which is, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Yes, it's true. I mean, I'm just looking at my own experience right now. So there is that. It's true. There is that belief that it's hurting me, and that belief does really kind of ratchet things up, because then if it's hurting me, it's not even in doubt. It's hurting me, and I've got to do something. But when I really look very closely, how do I know that's true?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the problem too for me is I don't get a break from it. I don't get happiness when it's not there.
I hear you, and
So,
I understand that you have a desire, and it's perhaps a very natural desire for things to be other than how they are. And given that this is what is, and when I say this is what is, I don't mean that your story of what this is what it is. I just mean that given that this is what is presently, then you can see how this habit of I've got to fix it, I've got to get out of this, there's hope of escape, there's still hope that I can control this and win. That is your actual suffering. Because you could look at it as, and granted, I'm sure you get plenty of support for this. I'm sure you get a lot of support for, oh, poor you.
yes.
And you get to choose if that's going to be how you want to live. Because given that this is what is, and the reality, the honest truth is you don't know what this is, then you're shaping your experience based on, poor me, I never get a break. And then it's not a surprise that that's your experience of it is, oh, poor me, I never get a break. But given that this is what is, so it's sort of like Arjuna, so Arjuna is on the battlefield, and he's like, is there any way out of this? Could we just call off the battle? And Krishna advises me, says, look, this is much bigger than that. You can't just go calling this battle off. This is happening. That's not what we're not really going to try and intervene in what's happening. What we want to get clear on is what is happening, what is really happening. And because I've got to stop this already starts with the assumption that there's a problem. So you don't want to you wouldn't be satisfied with just reducing the pain. You wouldn't be satisfied if we could eliminate the pain. And granted, I understand that would be nice, but you wouldn't be satisfied. Then there'd be something else.
Yeah. Or
So
you say worried that it was going to come back again.
yeah, or you'd be worried it's going to come back again. So that's not, there's something in you that it has a deeper longing for the truth. And you can choose that, and you can choose that by being aware of this, being aware of that habit of coloring your experience through this lens of, for me, I never get a break. If only.
Yeah.
Because then you're setting up all these conditions, and you're assuming from the get-go that there's a problem, instead of what I will propose to you, what will actually satisfy you, what you really are wanting, is to discover what is the deeper, clearer truth, the transcendent truth, the eternal truth here and now, that does not depend upon the circumstances. And in fact, that the circumstances are the circumstances are the only concern with the circumstances is that they point you to discover this. That they are offering you this opportunity where you say, I want, you know, you're like Arjuna saying to Krishna, show me reveal yourself to me as you really are.
Yes.
And you're saying to life, reveal yourself to me as you really are. Reveal myself to me as I really am. And life is saying, okay, I don't know, are you really sure about that? And you say, I'm pretty sure. And then it says, okay, here it is. And you say, I don't know, I'm scared.
Yeah.
And you can look in your heart, and you know that your longing for truth, your desire for truth is far greater than your desire to escape the pain.
I would agree. Yes. And thank you, Joey, because I think you're a great guide. I appreciate you very much.
Well, I appreciate you too. It takes a great deal of honesty to really be willing to look.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else before it's lunch? All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time.